Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a Sunday evening Joe and Joe weather show. When the weather is good in the summertime, we do things in the daytime, so we had to move the show. So, thanks for the coming on tonight. For those of you that are on the chat board, and the Joe and Joe, and those of you watching in the background, the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. 631-756-1125 is the telephone number for the best prices in town. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And should you make any purchase from the Tempest WeatherFlow website, which not only includes the Tempest WeatherFlow weather station, but it includes all sorts of other things. Weather gadgets and gizmos, weather fashion, and even a science kit for the youngins. So bear that in mind. Use the coupon code I want a weather station. And what will you get, Joe?
You'll get 10% off, Joe. And when you said the youngins, I don't know why, but I immediately thought of Buddy Ebsen as Jed Clampett. And his remark probably would be, doggy.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yes. So I'm kind of.
And you can enjoy this now because you have Me TV, so you can watch them.
I do. They put it on the system. They put another channel they put on was H and I, which is Heroes, and I forgot what the I stands for. But it's shows like Star Trek and Batman, the old Batman series.
Oh, yeah.
And a few other things. So I've been kind of dipping into H&I to see what's happening there. How'd you spend your weekend? Okay? Did you get awakened by? There were some really ripping thunderstorms that moved through overnight. And I don't know about you, but I was always a fan of overnight thunderstorms, the ones that wake you up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They can be rather Halloweenish. They usually, when they happen later in the summer, August into early September is when you're more likely to see them. And they put on some of the best lightning displays that you'll see when they happen at night. Of course, they interrupt your sleep, scare you half to death. Sometimes, jump out of bed unless you're a deep sleeper like me. I often said the atom bomb could go off, Joe, and I wouldn't know it.
Well, we had a very significant thunderstorm that went over, almost directly over New York City at about 2:30 or 3 o'clock this morning. I was kind of like on the northern edge of that. So I heard a lot of rumbling, saw flashes, but we really didn't get all that much in the way of rainfall. There was like a sudden burst of rain for maybe 2 or 3 minutes or whatever, but most of the action either took place to our south or in the latter part of Saturday or Saturday evening to the north, up toward Poughkeepsie, where they had an unofficial amount of like 3 inches of rain. So we were like in between these two major weather systems. So we did get something, but we didn't get clobbered like some folks either to the north or to the south. And I did lose power for about 15 seconds at about 3:14 this morning. That's something that's a little scary because Renata and I, we both have our own digital clock radios on each end table, which glow bright green. So you could literally, when you're dark adapted, you can see your way around the room just from those LED numbers. But you're lying there, and all of a sudden everything goes out, like whoa, and after about a minute or so, it just snaps or pops right back on again. But when you have that plus the thunderstorms, it is, as you said, a little spooky.
Yeah, I lost power Saturday morning for about 3 hours because we had some early morning thunderstorms and heavy rain that went through. But thankfully, was it Friday morning or Saturday morning? One of those mornings. It all, when you're approaching, when you're approaching 65, particularly when you're approaching it from the wrong direction, the days just seem the same after a while, and they pile up one after another. But we had I have to say, for the last 2 days, it has been. For me, it was uncomfortable, especially in the not so much in the morning, but especially in the afternoon. For the first time, I can honestly say, we had temperatures here that went to mid and upper 80s here up in the mountains, and it was upper 80s and low 90s further south. But it was a little tough, and I was at my daughter's house today with my grandchildren, and my son-in-law did some outdoor planting, and we went to Home Depot. And I mean, my God, the Atlanta sun in a parking lot is brutal. I mean, it's absolutely brutal. And we got back, and we bought 12 giant pots of flowers, and he was going to put them in a flower bed in the front of the house. I said, you know what, Doug, you're doing it yourself because I can't. It's way too hot for me. So I spent yesterday working on scrubbing my deck in that heat and humidity, and putting stuff in my new shed. And by the way, I want to give a big shout out to Mike and Matt from Tough Shed. I purchased my shed from Tough Shed, which you can find at Home Depot, and the shed is great, but the color. Sometimes when you pick out the color on a brochure and the color you get, it's not the same. Well, okay, I expected it. It might wind up being a shade lighter or a shade darker, but I mean, this was beyond. So it was, it would almost look like a cream color. So they're sending me 5 gallons of paint to paint my shed, and I really appreciate it. So shout out to Tough Shed. The customer service was great.
And you had what, heavy rain threatening when that shed was to be erected, and you were concerned about that?
The rain, well, yeah, and the rain stopped. Oh, that's the morning, right? The morning they put the shed in, that's what happened. So that was on. Our last show was Wednesday, so that was on Thursday. So Thursday morning I was wrong on both counts. I thought it was either Friday or Saturday. It was Thursday morning. I lost power, and I started to get nervous because the Tough Shed people were coming. But they came around 11 o'clock, and they also came when they said they were going to come, which was really good. But the power had come back, and there was no rain for the rest of the day. So that was that worked out. That worked out fine.
And when we had Thursday off, wait a minute, did you do a show on Thursday? You didn't do a show then on Thursday.
No. Did I solo Thursday? That
You said you
Joe,
were going to
I think I did solo Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you had to go to the rock, the
No, it's not the Rockland Boulders. This was the Hudson Valley Renegades game.
Yes, that's right. So, yeah, I did solo on Thursday. I spent a lot of time in the sun yesterday and today, so my brain is just a little bit fried.
Well, yeah, that's a lot of people go through that. Today, my son is going to have some work done on his car, so he went to the dealership in the afternoon, and when he got there, it was like 4 o'clock. He said, "Why are they closed?" I said, "It's not even 5 o'clock yet," and he was thinking that today was Monday, not and he's all frazzled.
Well, down here, except the big box, except for the big box stores, everything's closed on Sunday.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess they follow along the old blue laws.
Right.
Remember when?
Yes. And I can't, I can go to Walmart. I could buy wine. I can't buy wine on Sundays.
Oh, well, you'll have to stock up, Joe.
Well, naturally I do.
Yeah. And Renata met a celebrity on Thursday at the ball game. Kelsey Grammer.
Wow, how cool is that?
Isn't it amazing? There he was. He's into selling beer now. Has like a microbrewery or whatever that he's associated with, and there he was handing out sample cups of his beer. And Renata got a sample and also got a selfie with him. So.
Frank's, that's great. That's so cool when that happens. Frank Scalera, you brought back some memories in my mind because it's mid-August, and this was a time when my parents, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles. They all would get together. We'd go down to the Hunts Point Market, Joe, and buy bushels of tomatoes, and we would jar sauce.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, for the whole
So,
year. My mother,
I mean, this is the
we
time of
used to
year now.
do. They used to do. My mother used to do like 200, more than 200 jars, and
What?
we had this giant old bookcase in the garage, and it basically that's where we kept the tomato sauce until
Wow.
you get to the middle of summer and you're sort of down to your precious few. So yeah, it was time to make them, and that just that knocked some good memories back into my head. So I appreciate that, Frank. Thank you very much. And Leon Probitsky, the early hit here to the tip jar. Thanks for hitting super chat tonight, Leon. Most appreciated. And on that note, let's take a look at the satellite, Joe. And it looks to me, first of all, it's nice and clear up and down the East Coast. I
Right, and
do.
I should mention because early this morning, when it was cloudy and we had showers and scattered thunderstorms or whatever, was supposed to be the peak of the annual Perseid meteor shower, and a lot of people
Naturally.
hoping to look skyward to see that. Now, that doesn't mean the shower is over. In fact, you can probably catch, and here in the tri-state New York area, I think it's actually going to be fairly clear at least through midnight, maybe on into 1 or 2 in the morning. So if you want to step out late tonight, you'll still probably be able to see a few. You won't get the maximum rate, which is better than 60 an hour. You probably get maybe a quarter of that. But if you want to see, a few shooting stars, go out late tonight, and you will probably be able to do so. Again, it should be reasonably clear for sky watching or sky gazing. I did see a few myself early on Saturday morning before the schmutz rolled in, like at 3:30 a.m. on Saturday morning. I was outside, getting reacquainted. It's a funny thing now. If you get outside 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you can actually see the stars that dominate the wintertime sky, like Orion the Hunter and Taurus the Bull. A reminder that the colder days are just around the corner, folks. So even though it may be very hot where you are, or may become hot in the coming days ahead, and we'll be exploring that on the forecast in just a moment. Just a reminder now that we're now past the midpoint of summer, and I don't know, Joe. Have you noticed that the evenings are getting darker quicker now, and the mornings are also responding to that shortening of the daylight hours by, well, the dawn is not breaking quite as early as it was a month ago. So there are signals, there are signs that we are heading toward cooler weather, or at least a cooler time of the year coming up in a matter of over the next month or so.
Right, and I'm close to the central time zones here, so it's dark until about 6:30 now.
Wow.
I still have late sunsets. I mean, we're coming up on 7:45, and I do also have some thunderstorms that are approaching. So there's some clouds coming in, and where I am, it's so wooded that oftentimes it looks darker than it actually is. But yeah, the sunsets are coming a little earlier too, but they're still after 8 o'clock. And in fact, in the heart of on the longest days, sunset here is close to 9 o'clock, 9:05.
Wow,
So
that's
we never get into those early sun. The earliest the sunrise here is maybe a little bit before 6. So now we're up to about 6:30.
you really should be. You really should be where you are in the central time zone, not the eastern time zone.
I could be. I mean, it's only 100 miles to the west to the Alabama border, so I mean they got to draw the line someplace. Thankfully, I don't live, where half my house would be in one time zone and half the house would be in another. We do have to the west, across Illinois and Indiana and down into Tennessee and northern Alabama. You can see where the lightning strikes are going on the southern part of that cloud mass. We have another one of these warm front, cold front combinations to deal with. So the warm sector is going to determine who gets severe weather both today and Tuesday. In fact, in terms of the timing, It could very well wind up, Joe, that Tuesday might be the bigger severe weather day than Monday, but we'll see. In the meantime, it is clear up and down the East Coast for the most part, except for some thunderstorms in parts of Maine and in southern Florida. Otherwise, it's nice. Took a little while for the dew points to come down in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, but when I looked at the 5 o'clock surface map, and there you go. I noticed that the dew points kind of shaved back down into the lower 60s, even a couple of upper 50s here and there, particularly as you went north. So I mean, the humidity was higher than you might like, but the dew points were higher than you might like, and the humidity was higher than you might like, but it wasn't terrible. When we get to those dew points going back up above 70, which is going to happen shortly, that's terror. That's what I would define as terror. Define as terrible.
Well, the cold front is just to our east right now, here in the New York tri-state area, and it'll get further offshore. But then, unfortunately, the front will be subsiding. Well, it already has for the most part. It subsided over the Delmarva Peninsula region in northern Virginia. And now the game will be, in the coming next 24 hours, that front will slowly but surely lift northward. And as it does, there'll be a wave of low pressure that'll be approaching from the lower Great Lakes. And eventually that front will move over our area, probably sometime the end of tomorrow or tomorrow night, and usher in a warmer and more humid airflow. And that wave over the Great Lakes will move in and set the stage for, again, some showery and potentially strong thunderstorm weather here from tomorrow night on into the early part of Tuesday. And it may very well be, Joe, that we could see a risk, again, of severe weather, maybe at the time that you love to see it so much, in the overnight hours when it's dark.
Yeah, right, exactly. 90s today in Virginia, North Carolina. In fact, middle to upper 90s in the eastern half of North Carolina. I see a 99 there. I'm not exactly sure where that was, but mid 90s across South Carolina, mid 90s across central and South Georgia, North Georgia getting to the mid and upper 80s. Upper 90s through Alabama, over some 100-degree readings in parts of Mississippi, and again in Louisiana, the southeast a little bit lower, but not that far away. I mean, it was just brutal here. And of course, it's another day in Texas where everybody is over 100 degrees, including areas down closer to the Gulf Coast. The Southwest, not too bad there for this time of year. It's mostly it's all on 110, which you consider that a small victory. And up in the northern plains and in the northern Rockies, there's a nice cool high that has built in. So temperatures here in areas topping out in the warmest spots in the 70s, but there were a lot of places today that had a tough time getting out of the 60s. On the radar as of 7:49 Eastern Time, we're going to take a look. And up in Maine, we've got some stronger storms crossing into the New Brunswick side. There's also a little bit of a line in northwestern Maine that's moving southeast. Otherwise, the radars are really quiet up and down the coast. Then you go back into eastern Alabama, northwest Georgia, seeing some heavier thunderstorms there, and also into eastern Tennessee as the complex is moving eastward. And we've got a few severe thunderstorm warnings popping up here and there. In parts of southern Illinois, we got one. We've got a few of them in eastern, I believe that's Nebraska or Kansas. No, that's Kansas. That we've got a few strong storms, strong storms moving just north of the north side of Kansas City at the moment. And we've got a string of severe thunderstorm warnings up in northwest Texas and into parts of western Oklahoma, and some showers and some thunderstorms with some flash flood warnings in parts of Southern California, southern Nevada, and back over into Arizona, southern Utah, New Mexico, and even into the great state of Colorado. Now, the Storm Prediction Center tonight, as we take a look, so there are 3 severe thunderstorm watches that are up, Joe. The state of Maine is in a severe thunderstorm watch, which just moments ago was cut in half. I'll just give this a quick refresh, just in case it's a little late. Yeah, in fact, now the severe thunderstorm watch in Maine is done. The severe thunderstorm watch is in Alabama and Eastern Tennessee, that's getting whittled down to just a handful of counties. And we have a severe thunderstorm watch in northwest Texas and on up into western Oklahoma, extending into uh, much of the eastern 2/3, let's say, of the state of Kansas. And there's probably some more severe weather to come because the enhanced risk is actually to the east of where the watch box is up in that area tonight. Enhance in Missouri, southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, slight risk that runs from northwest Texas across the parts of the Missouri River Valley and the Mississippi River Valley into Tennessee and Kentucky. There is, you can see the slight risk up in Maine, but again, a lot of those storms seem to have played themselves out right now. You don't see slight risk for severe weather in Maine too often. 5% tornado risk tonight in southern Missouri, southeast Kansas, and extreme northern Arkansas. So that's elevated tornado risk there, and a larger 2% that pushes all the way up into Iowa and Minnesota. Now, for tomorrow, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the morning forecast. The tough part about tomorrow, Joe, is that this warm fronts warm fronts love to come to New York City and then they hang. Okay,
Right.
they just hang. You think sometimes that they should fly all the way up to Albany and beyond, and a lot of times they just come to a grinding halt, especially in the spring when you have to fight the onshore flow in the cold ocean. It's a little easier to pull off now, but SPC does have a marginal risk to the lower Hudson Valley, Long Island, and a small portion of southwest Connecticut. It goes to a slight risk in southern New Jersey, southernmost Pennsylvania, and then you have this large area of slight risk right across the mid-Atlantic from Virginia and Maryland and Delaware west into West Virginia, much of Kentucky and eastern Tennessee and southern Ohio, then the marginal risk back for North Carolina, South Carolina, and extreme North Georgia, extreme northern Alabama. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays tomorrow overall. And then on Tuesday, and this is where I think in terms of the timing, Tuesday's kind of tough. They have it, Long Island, a tiny portion of southwest Connecticut, the lowest part of the lower Hudson Valley, New York City, northern New Jersey except the northwest, marginal risk, and that just kind of goes down into North Carolina and South Carolina, but they do have an area of slight risk in eastern Virginia, the Delmarva Peninsula, and southern New Jersey.
That's
Uh,
front end loaded, probably, though, Joe. That's probably for the early part of the day on Tuesday. You've
right.
got to figure that perhaps by Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening, all of that will have been shoved out over the ocean. So, this is, my opinion. This active weather is going to be arriving at the end of the day tomorrow or tomorrow night, and then spilling over into the early part of Tuesday, scattered showers and possibly some locally gusty thunderstorms.
Yeah, it goes to the timing of the cold front. If the front's going to eventually make it through, but if it takes an extra couple of hours, where instead of coming through, say, at midday or early afternoon, it comes through maybe middle or later in the afternoon, that might nudge. I mean, you might see them nudge this up a little bit northwest and maybe a little bit northeast. Maybe the slight risk gets nudged up a little. I don't think it's going to get nudged up a lot if it is. But again, if it's all a matter of the timing of the cold front when it comes through. So that's something we're going to keep an eye on. But once that front does go through, it should set us up for some nice weather for the second half of the week.
Okay. Well, there are some questions, I think, for later in the week because Friday there may be some kind of an upper level system that is diving down across New England, and that may actually come close enough for maybe generating a few thunderstorms here, perhaps on Friday. I'm
Right.
some uncertainty about that.
I'm thinking Wednesday and Thursday there should be dew point relief on both those days.
Yes.
That should make it better. It's not going to get a whole lot cooler, but at least from the standpoint of humidity, it's going to get a bit better. And some of those dry dew points, by the way, are going to make it all the way down into the southern Appalachians. So I'm happy about that. If that winds up playing according to plan, WPC tonight. Might as well let me see update this. So WPC indicating a marginal risk for flash flooding in Maine from whatever showers and storms they've had. And I don't see any flash flood warnings that are up at the moment. But we do have a moderate risk of flash flooding in that area of enhanced risk of severe weather for southern Missouri and extreme northern Arkansas for tonight into tomorrow morning. And then for tomorrow, WPC has a slight risk, 15 to 40% slight risk chance for flash flooding. And this is the time of year in August. These thunderstorms tend to be much more moisture laden than they are, say, in June or July. Not that they can't be moisture laden in June or July, but in August, when the ocean water temperatures are reaching their peaks and there's really not much of a marine influence, some of these storms could, can draw in a lot of moisture as they develop. So they've got a slight risk for the lower Hudson Valley, the middle Hudson Valley, maybe up to the Catskills, much of Connecticut except the Northeast, all of Long Island, just about all of New Jersey, much of eastern and southern Pennsylvania, Maryland, northern Delaware, West Virginia, southern Ohio, and then kind of getting down into the North Carolina and Tennessee mountains. And then for day 3, now this is Tuesday, they have a marginal risk in New England, nothing for eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, no risk. And then it goes back to a marginal to slight risk from the southern half of the Delmarva Peninsula southward along the coastal plain of Virginia, North and South Carolina into Georgia and northern Florida, and also a marginal risk in a good chunk of the state of Arizona, especially the north and northeast part of the state, southern Utah, southern Colorado, and northwestern New Mexico. SPC's doing rainfall amounts of anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to some pockets of an inch and a half for the next 2 days. So this takes us through Tuesday night. So it covers both events. It's convective, so we know that locally some areas could certainly wind up with more than that. Sometimes it could be double the amounts. Also seeing some heavier rains in Wisconsin and across into the lower peninsula of Michigan, across southern Missouri and southernmost Illinois, inch and a half to some 3-inch amounts of rain, and anywhere from a trace to a half to 3/4 of an inch in parts of the Southwest with the monsoon. When we stretch it out 7 days, it is a lot of rain in Florida, particularly central and South Florida on the West Coast, where we're looking at 3 inches or more over the next 7, because some tropical moisture is going to be getting involved there more so. And in the Northeast, it's pretty much 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half. So it's mostly from the systems for Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, get it all out of the way, and then hopefully we'll have better things to look forward to for the latter part of the week into the weekend. I will say, Joe, that I was kind of impressed looking at CPC, Climate Prediction Center. They are building an expanding area of heat.
Yes,
covers a good part of the country by on the 6 to 10 and also on the 8 to 14 day prog. I've been saying for most of the last 4 to 6 or 5 to 8 weeks here, it hasn't been so much the heat, it's been the humidity. We haven't really seen very many exceedingly hot days, but you're getting the idea from what CPC is hinting at that maybe not this week, but next week, we may be in the throes of some really hot weather, even here in the Northeast.
Yep, the long range does show it, so we're going to get to that now. Just want to give a shout out to Anthony Spiraccio. Hitting super chat. Thank you, Anthony. He says that was some storm last night, Joe and Joe. Today was a great beach day on Long Island. I'm sure it was. Once overnight thunderstorms move away, usually they're followed by very good beach days. And Raymond, and I'm going to butcher your last name, Raymond. I'm sorry. It's Gilbelt or Gilboit. Uh, I hope I'm close. Thank you for hitting super chat tonight and you asking the question of any confirmed damage. There were parts of Suffolk County. Uh, I know particularly around Patchogue. There was quite a bit of damage from these storms last night. I haven't really heard much more than just that one particular area, but if they got something, I'm sure other places nearby did too.
Yeah, well, I said that last night. I mean, I was up. The lightning, the thunder, and we did get a bit of a spurt of rain, but most of that activity at 2 o'clock, or actually 2:30 to 3 o'clock in the morning, was moving to my south over New York City, and they really looked like a rather significant spell of heavy weather. We were just only on the edge.
Yeah, uh, they all that stuff came out of Pennsylvania, where during the day yesterday, with the severe weather that they had there, numerous severe thunderstorm warnings, and there were a few tornado warnings there. I think also in Delaware County in upstate New York, I saw a tornado warning up for them. Meanwhile, on the upper air pattern going forward, as Joe alluded to, if you watch what happens, we still have this Canadian jet that's shooting systems down, and here's the one that's coming. You've got this system that is moving in for Monday night and Tuesday. You see that upper low in southern Wisconsin that then opens up and heads to the East Coast on Tuesday. The actual upper trough doesn't move off until early Wednesday. It's in a slightly weakening phase, which would be positive, but there's still a pretty hefty looking shortwave there that goes on through. Then there's another upper low that drops down Thursday. You see that there between Lake Winnipeg and James Bay, with a trough that swings around, goes negative. The thunderstorms with this might be fierce, so I think it's a question of how far south they get. And then after that trough lifts out, take a look at what's going on. We'll start. I'm just going to roll it back to today, and there's not much of an upper high that is sitting. The ridge is a sort of skinny subtropical ridge that runs across the Atlantic, and it's kind of still focused on that area down in the south from Alabama westward to Texas, where we've seen the super hot heat. The not much ridging in the southwest, which is why the heat has come off those peaks in the double digits over 100 or triple, however you want to call it, over 110 is what I'm meaning to say. Well, as we go through these troughs that go through this week, after the one on Friday, that ridge repositions itself over the middle Mississippi Valley and then strengthens and stretches to the East Coast. And we do get into it in the Northeast come next weekend. Particularly, on Saturday, we still have this upper low that's over between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, so that might hold the temperatures back just a bit. But I think by Sunday, a week from today, we may start. We'll start a string of 90s. The interesting thing about this is that while the ridge does actually get rather strong, it's stretched out east-west, and you can see that there is the upper low over Hudson Bay is still there. The Canadian jet just retreats far enough north that it allows the heat to come into the east, and it may be late in the forecast period you start to see that ridge break down as we get toward the end of the month, and you start to see troughing coming back into the eastern United States. But yeah, this Joe, maybe this is the last opportunity to get a mini heat wave in parts of in particularly southern areas of the Northeast and northern Mid-Atlantic, which have a lot of areas have had a tough time putting 3 days of 90-degree readings back to back. Maybe this may be the last opportunity.
Well, that would be again next week. Looks like it could be our shot in terms of getting more than just a day or two of 90 plus, especially at Central Park. Now, Newark Airport has had a heat wave where they've been able to string together a few 90-degree days, but Central Park has always just fallen short of that. And that, we hear so much about the extreme heat that's going on out in the West or in the Southwest. And here in New York City, where we've been sitting with, not much. I guess if you had a chance to, look at the upcoming summer and you say, oh, we go all the way to mid-August and no heat wave yet in New York, you'd probably say, oh, that looks like a very nice summer, a Garden of Eden summer. Again, we haven't gotten to 93 straight times, but we've been in the upper 80s, 87, 88, 89, more than a few times in a row. And again, the humidity has played a big factor. It's been, if for nothing else, a very humid and very oppressive summer, especially so in July. August, not too bad yet, but next week we may finally get our run of heat here in New York and also in a good part of the Northeast.
Meanwhile, the European and the GFS are waking up to the possibility that the tropics may start getting a bit busy or busier. I mean, they can't be any less busy than they've been. We do have the GFS actually showing what looks like two lows there, out in the tropical Atlantic by Wednesday or Thursday, although because of the nature of the subtropical ridge, they're having a bit of a problem going westward. And in fact, the GFS actually has a tropical storm west of the Cabo Verde Islands by Friday. So we'll see if that winds up happening, and it just kind of chugs it along to the west and doesn't really do much with it. And there's also some kind of gyre that seems to be trying to form over Central America. And on various runs, we've seen the models try to kick something up in the Northwest Caribbean and taking it into the Gulf of Mexico. This particular run is doing that and taking something into the Western Gulf. I wouldn't get too hung up on the specifics, other than the fact that if there's going to be a strong east-west ridge across the United States, it's going to extend out in the Atlantic. That would tend to favor anything that is out there to want to move more to the west rather than to the north. So that's something to bear in mind. Now, whether these things come to pass the way they're being pictured or is a whole other matter, but I think it's probably safe to say that we're starting to see a change in the upper air pattern out in the tropical in the tropics and the subtropics. And in fact, I'm just going to bring up the wind shear map because that's always important to look at. And it does seem, as we're going into this week, that there's various areas of shear, but there are also areas where there's not much in the way of wind shear, especially as we move through the latter part of this week and into the weekend and next weekend. So the upper air conditions seem to be becoming a little more favorable for tropical cyclone formation in a broad sense. So we'll have to wait to see how these particular waves behave as they start moving westward.
Colorado State, which has put out for a number of years now their forecast for hurricane activity, just recently bumped up the activity now. They're now saying it's going to be an above normal season. Well, I think 21 named storms, and their main concern, or their main, they're pointing to the abnormally warm ocean water or areas of ocean water in the Atlantic Basin as the reason for above normal activity. But at the same time, the folks over at CPC are also calling for an unusually strong El Nino. Now, El Nino tends to repel hurricane activity or tropical cyclone activity because of the shear. There tends to be more of a wind shear over the Atlantic, which kind of changes, or not changes, but kind of rips apart these potential tropical systems. But I guess the Colorado people are saying, well, that may be all well and good, but they think that the very warm water is going to overcome that, and that's why they're going for an above normal. I don't know. I would disagree on that, Joe. I think you need, if you're going to if you're going to have a good tropical cyclone, a good tropical storm or hurricane, you need that upper support. And if you're going to have, shear taking place, I don't care how warm the water is. It's what's upstairs that counts. I think in terms of creating.
I don't. I'm glad you brought this up because I really want, and we'll go back to the maps in a minute because we want to take a look at the next couple of days with regards to the risk for severe weather. But this was something that I was thinking about today to bring up on the show tonight. The Hurricane Center also in their forecast nudged up their forecast amounts of total storms. The Very similar to Colorado State University. I didn't read what the reasoning was behind it. I imagine it was probably some of the same reasoning. So here's the thing. So we've already had 4 named storms and 1 unnamed storm. That was the one back in January. So we've already had 5. So if let's just for argument's sakes, they said 21. Let's use the round number 20. Okay. If you're going to get to that round number, it is now August the 13th. There's only 18 days left in this. Well, there's 18 days left in this month. If we're going to get to that top number, we're going to need to get 15 or 16 named storms going forward. So, and we had this last year, if you remember, with no storms in August, and you and I both sat here because the moaners in the world were all saying that the hurricane season was a bust, and we pointed out that you're going to wake up one day and there's going to be like 5 storms, 5 named storms within a matter of a few days. And I think if you're going to hit that top number, it's going to be a very busy latter part of August, September, and October. To get 15 named storms in that let's call it a 2.5 month time frame.
It's very funny because last year, you're right, we had virtually nothing in August, and we kept saying that it's a La Nina summer. La Nina, in contrast to El Nino, means enhanced tropical activity, and we kept saying, well, where's the tropical activity? And then we saw the activity come in September into October, and it came fast and furious. Well, now, all right, so we're not seeing very much of anything in August to this point, and so it's a building El Nino. El Nino is supposed to suppress hurricane and tropical storm activity. So the question is, are we really going to see a big jump, as you point out, 15 storms for the remainder of the hurricane or tropical storm season, or will El Nino do its job and keep the numbers or keep the activity low in spite again of the abnormally warm water? Again, I'm a proponent of the fact that the waters may be very warm, but if you have that shear, it's going to be more difficult for you to develop tropical activity.
Right. And a few of the El Nino watchers, by the way, have been pointing out that the El Nino seems to be more in the strengthening much more in the central Pacific as opposed to the eastern Pacific. So that could make a big that could make a difference in terms of how much development you're going to see in the Atlantic. Perhaps that if it's a more of a central based El Nino, it would allow for more tropical activity in the Atlantic side. There's, I think, also the atmosphere's muscle memory from the last 3 years with the La Nina to still work through, and this El Nino is still pretty young, so it may not have, its impacts may not have spread across the atmosphere yet. I know the snow lovers will be jumping up and down because when they heard central-based El Nino, it's usually bullish for snowfalls in the eastern part of the United States. But you know what? That's a problem for 3 or 4 months from now, not now. But we'll see how that how that plays out. And the other thing I want to mention before we go to the maps again is the fact that Hurricane Dora crossed the international date line as a hurricane. And that is only the third time in the satellite era that that has happened. There was a previous Hurricane Dora, I think it was sometime back in the 70s. Well, I'm sorry, let me correct that. Let me stop right there. There have only been three hurricanes in the Pacific that have been hurricanes in the Eastern Pacific, the Central Pacific, and in the Western Pacific. So it went through three forecast zones as a
Wow.
hurricane. That's only happened three times. It was another Hurricane Dora back sometime in the 70s, I think. Hurricane John, which was, I believe, in 1997, that did that. And now this Dora did that, crossing the date line and going to the other side as a hurricane. As far as I know, none have ever made it completely across. Uh, and that may have to do with the fact that these storms have tended to gain latitude in the middle of the Pacific. So they start turning more northward. They start getting involved with Pacific systems that are out there, and they get sheared apart. And that's pretty much what happened with Dora. So pretty interesting to see a storm do that, uh, moving westward. And of course, as far south as it passed through the Hawaiian Islands, unfortunately, uh, meant that there was going to be that much more dry air as the hurricane. The hurricane goes by. If you're far enough north, the weather is great because you get all this sinking air. Well, it wasn't good for Hawaii with that sinking air and the already dry conditions making it that much drier. And of course, we all know what's happened in Maui with that horrible fire that burned the whole historic town down and then some. Terrible. But this was an indirect result of Hurricane Dora tracking as far south as it did.
And there's a system that's located pretty well to the south and east of the big island of Hawaii, Joe, that has a 90% chance over the next 48 hours to develop into a tropical system, maybe a named system. And that, too, like Dora, will be passing south of the Hawaiian Islands probably sometime mid or late week of this upcoming week. Amazing that we're seeing that. As I'm looking at the 7-day graphic from the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, and they no longer have they are no longer tracking officially Dora now that she is to the west of the date line, although it's still on the map as a tropical storm. But now they'll have to watch this next system, which apparently again is going to be increasing in intensity and passing south of the Hawaiian Islands during the coming days ahead.
Yeah, and I just pulled up the outlook. Yeah, that there's in between that and another system that's off the coast of Central America, which also has a high probability in the next 7 days of becoming a tropical depression. They got a 90% chance of that, and in between that, at 15 north and about 116-ish west, we have Hurricane Fernanda, which was upgraded to a hurricane with top winds of 75 miles an hour. That's moving west northwest at 8 knots. But the one that's to the west of that, that's 1,300 miles southeast of the Hawaiian Islands, is down around 11-ish north. So it's another one of these. It's like Dora. It's pretty far south.
Right.
And the Hurricane Center actually is mentioning now two areas in the Atlantic, 0 and 20%, 0 and 20% for those two systems that I pointed out to you that the GFS was doing something with toward the end of the week. Now let's look at the situation for tomorrow. You see the upper low, and Tuesday you see the upper low in southern Minnesota moving eastward. There is Monday night and a Tuesday morning as the warm front goes by. You can see that there's some of the darker brown spots that show up in northeastern Pennsylvania and in the Hudson Valley.
We're not seeing any maps though,
Joe.
Oh,
okay. I'm sorry. Just a second. Thanks for telling me. I forgot to switch back. Here we go. So let's go back to the maps. Good. At least you told me at the beginning of it, not after I've rambled for a while.
Dissertation or whatever.
Right. So,
question before you get in. Scott Patton on the chat board says, "Do you think that Dora should be retired for what it did to Hawaii, even though it didn't have a direct hit?" I think Dora should be retired just for the matter of it. As you pointed out, it's only the third storm ever in the Pacific to make it through all three zones: the the eastern, the central, and now the western Pacific. It's a very long-lived storm, and certainly, yeah, for what it has indirectly did to Hawaii with the or to Maui. Yeah, I don't think you're going to see Dora anymore on any future list. At least that's my opinion.
They didn't retire the first one, so maybe they might retire the second. I don't know. I don't know what their criteria is to be honest. Um, anyhow, here we go with the upper trough that's swinging by. This is another one of these warm front, cold front combinations. So you've got some shear that moves into southern New York and southern New England, and also down into parts of Pennsylvania. I actually should use the 700 millibar. I pulled the 500 up. Let's look at the 700, and you can see the areas here. Monday night into Tuesday morning, and then the upper low kind of opens up, and there's just an open trough. And Tuesday afternoon, you start to get into some shear, right along the coast, down into Virginia and North Carolina. And at least from what the GFS is doing, it actually, Joe, does have. Now, this is for. See, the new GFS is slower by a few hours. So now it doesn't have the front coming through till late in the day. So it's got the showers and storms somewhere between 2 and 5 p.m. And they actually are in, one of the things with this is that those storms will be strengthening in terms of the timing if it winds up being more mid to late afternoon in terms of a frontal passage. And that line is particularly active in Virginia, North Carolina, down into South Carolina and Georgia. It's some big cells there. So the GFS is certainly trying. And then with the warm front, just to go backwards, the warm front, you can see the rain and some heavier rain in parts of Ohio and West Virginia. And then you got this big bullseye in southern New Jersey there with tomorrow evening. And then moving over Long Island and into New England Monday night into Tuesday morning. So it just kind of implies to me, I mean, again, look, if it winds up being like the earlier runs where it comes through earlier in the day, then I agree with you. Most of the storms will be east and south, and there's no need to bring up the risk. But if the timing of this front is just a couple of hours slower, that can make a huge difference for some areas.
Well, so far for me now, the warm fronts have really done a number. I've gotten the most rains out of warm frontal passages as opposed to cold front passages. So for me, I'm thinking that maybe this will be another round of potentially heavy precip tomorrow night. So we'll see how that all pans out.
All right, and in the meantime, just was looking at the European. It's also kind of matches up with the GFS pretty well in terms of the timing. The European has been the slowest of all the models. The GFS has been slowly coming around to the European's idea in terms of timing. Anyway, once that goes out, we've got higher pressures that build in for Wednesday and Thursday. Although the model's down because the upper trough lags so much, now it actually has some scattered thunder showers around and maybe a thunderstorm or two on Wednesday in inland spots. So we'll have to see if that's correct with the trough lagging the way it is. And then here's your Thursday system that Joe mentioned earlier. And you see it kind of brings a fast-moving line of storms across the eastern Great Lakes. I'm going to see what it looks like on the radar view on the GFS. And you see it there. Really kind of amplifies across upstate New York and into New England. The southern edge doesn't really kind of cuts off near Route 84, but that might change. And then we get a high that builds in on Saturday. And then the high goes off the mid-Atlantic coast. We get into west wind, and that means the humidity comes up and the temperatures come up. Yeah, I mean, I certainly with what's happening in the upper air, it would suggest that I would say starting next Sunday, we could start putting together a string of 90-degree highs that could last through a good chunk of the week of August 20. Starting Sunday would be August 20th. So that week that follows, the work week that follows, it looks like that could be a hot one. That's where we're going to see maybe the opportunity to get that little 3 days in a row of 90-degree plus temperatures, which many areas have had, but there's been a few areas that have not done that, and very few have gone beyond 3 or 4 days. The ones that have gone above 90, places like Newark and Philadelphia, for example. I don't know that any of them have really stretched it much beyond 3 or 4 days. So this might be the one. This might be the one time that it happens this summer.
Now I'm thinking back 40 years ago, in early September, it was very hot. We had a number of days at or above 90. I only remember that because Renata and I got engaged in at the end of July, and in early September we started looking for catering halls for our wedding, which would be the following September. And we also found an apartment that we would eventually move into, and it turned out that that period of time that was exceptionally hot weather. That first week of September of 1983. Ouch. It's 40 years ago. I can't believe that. And guess what, Joe? Tomorrow's the 20th anniversary of the big blackout in the Northeast. Remember that blackout on August 14th in 2003?
Yeah.
That affected not only the Northeast, but also parts of the Great Lakes as well. And that was 20 years ago. I mean, where's the time going? It's amazing.
Well, it's like this show. I mean, we start the show and it's just so filled with energy and class that before you know it, it's an hour goes by and we're coming up on 8:30. So, do you have Briller Jeopardy, or do I? I'm looking.
I don't know. I don't think I have Briller Jeopardy. I haven't heard from Mr. Briller in a while. I can check, and give me just a few moments here, and we will see what we have.
I think I have one here that we didn't do the last time.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I don't have something that's been hanging out for many days. Monday, 8:50 p.m. No, I think we did this. Yeah, we definitely did this already. So, all right. So
okay, so we were doing August highs. Okay, average high temperatures in the month of August.
Right.
So let's start with New York City Central Park. I don't think we did this one.
Average high temperature in August?
For the month of August in Central Park.
I'll say 82 degrees.
You say 82. All right, Howard A. No, the average high for Central Park, not a park in Phoenix. Okay. Shrubby says 88. David Carter 81. Christinapedia 84. Maggie P 84. But Frank R. Joe 83. So you only missed it by one. 83. And Howard A says 83. Okay, gotcha. All right, next one is Oklahoma City.
Ouch.
Oklahoma City. So let me just put it on the chat board so this way, Oklahoma City. So this way, you know what it is. So here we go. Oklahoma City.
OKC. I'll say 92.
Well, it stops right there, Joe. You stopped it right there. You hit it on the nose.
Wow.
92. The rule is that if the hosts of the show guess the number correctly, it stops. Okay. So the next one here. Oops. I'm sorry. Wrong chat board. Just a second. PHI. Philadelphia is next. Philadelphia.
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 How about 85?
How about 85? Okay, you did not hit it on the nose. But Frank R., David Carter, both said 86. And that is the correct answer, 86. So you missed that one by one.
No.
Now the next one is Richmond, Virginia. Lovely little city, Richmond, Virginia. Been there a few times.
I'm going to say 88.
You're going to say 88. Okay, it stops right there. Although Michael McGuire and Steve LaPointe also put up 88, and Howard A. and Carol DeCiara and William Uber all putting up 88, and the correct answer is 88.
88.
Right. Now, the last one is San Diego, California, Joe. San Diego.
Oh, San Diego. San Diego. San Diego. You see, in San Diego, a place like Los Angeles and San Diego, they're going to be getting into their hottest time of the year with the Santa Ana winds probably in another 6 weeks or so. So, I'll say 80.
You'll say 80, and you are incorrect. Seeing here on the chat board, we've got Anthony Spiraccio 77, Frank Scalera 81, Shrubby 79, Frank R 77, Steve Lapointe 74, William Uber 76, Rich Rothmansky 76. So Frank R and Anthony Spiraccio at 77. 77 WAVC.
Yeah.
By the way, Mother Briller is out of the hospital. Yippee! So she can go concentrate now on her ice skating, as I've joked about, and Scott Briller mentioned that to me in a message to me. So that's great news, and continued improving health for Mother Briller. And I just got a message from Mr. Goodman.
Bill Goodman?
Mm-hmm. Let me
He's probably talking about hurricane activity.
Yes, he is. So he says, one EPS, one European member in the middle of the pack with a Long Island landfall. Okay. Entertaining, of course. God knows what will happen, and he says even God's not paying that close attention at this point.
When is this supposed landfall?
Oh, somewhere in the long range. I mean, who knows?
Right.
But the overall point is that the models are beginning their annual let's start spinning things up. So I think that says that the tropics in the Atlantic are not going to be quiet for much longer.
Well, we'll see. I remember about 4 weeks ago they had, or 3 weeks ago, it was at the day 15 where they had I think right around this time they had like a Category 3.
Yeah.
Along the
well, we knew that was silly.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but there's stuff on there for the end of the week. So I just think the fact that it's got some systems out there in some form or another is telling. And speaking of telling, we're going to tell you to get a Tempest WeatherFlow weather station. The Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the description to this video. Use the coupon code I want a weather station. And if you do, you get
10. A big 10% off.
Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Your go-to place for hardware needs, stuff for your yard, and whatever you need to make sure you're prepared in case we do get a tropical storm up the East Coast this year. 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Okay, so hope everybody had a great weekend. We're going to wrap it up here, and we'll see you tomorrow night at the usual time, 7:35 p.m. Eastern. Nighty-night.
Good night, folks.